Hey, welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving into optimization versus sub-optimization. Basically, understanding how aiming for overall excellence can sometimes get skewed when you focus just on one little piece.
Yeah, absolutely. So, optimization is like the big picture deal, right? It's about maximizing the whole system's performance rather than just parts of it.
Exactly. Optimization is all about a holistic approach. It's like, you're looking at every component and making sure everything works in harmony to achieve the best outcome.
True.
It involves identifying weaknesses and then streamlining processes across the board.
And then there's sub-optimization. Now, that's when you enhance just one isolated element without considering how it affects the whole, right?
Right, sub optimization is focusing on a segment, sometimes with short term gains, but you might end up, well, compromising the bigger picture. Think of it like fixing one gear in a clock without checking if the entire
Yeah,
mechanism will still
exactly.
tick smoothly.
It's interesting because if you're just zeroing in on one component, you might run into issues like bottlenecks or even conflict with your overall strategy. Would you say that's accurate?
Definitely, it's like, increasing production speed on a factory line without checking product quality. You get faster output, but if the quality drops, then you're really not optimizing in the true sense.
Right, absolutely. Which brings us to a common pitfall. People sometimes conflate the two concepts. They mix up improvement in a specific area with improving the whole system.
Exactly, and that's a major mistake. One must really grasp that optimization is a comprehensive strategy that considers context, interdependencies, and long term impacts, while suboptimization could just be a, a narrow focus that might leave you facing unforeseen issues later.
Right. And speaking of context, the discussion highlighted several different scenarios, like business operations or team collaboration. In manufacturing, for instance, if you optimize the production line without considering customer satisfaction or product quality, it's not a win.
Exactly. For example, imagine a company that's laser focused on speeding up production. That's the optimization of just one aspect. But if customer feedback suffers, then you've basically achieved sub optimization. You
Spot
know
on.
what I mean?
So, the key takeaway is to adopt an approach where every improvement aligns with a broad system wide goal. Otherwise, you risk making decisions that yield minor, isolated benefits at the cost of overall performance.
Right, it's like trying to upgrade a few ingredients in a recipe without tasting the final dish overall. If everything doesn't come together well, the entire meal suffers.
Yeah, exactly. And there are common mistakes to avoid. One is simply equating optimization with sub optimization. As we mentioned, just because you're enhancing one part doesn't mean you're actually improving the whole.
Yep. And another mistake is neglecting context. Optimization strategies need to be tailored considering, for example, resource allocation, long term goals, and even ethical considerations.
Right, ethics can sometimes be overlooked. Now, let me play devil's advocate here. Don't you think there are cases when sub optimization might actually be the better choice? I mean, when you're operating under severe constraints and need quick fixes?
That's a fair point. There are definitely scenarios where sub optimization is strategic, like when limited resources dictate a more focused improvement in one area. But then the key is to always be aware of how that decision impacts the broader system.
I see your point. So it's about finding a balance then, balancing short term wins with long term overall optimization.
Exactly, balancing immediate gains against the backdrop of the full picture. It's like, when you're planning a road trip, maybe you choose the fastest highway for a stretch, but then need to make sure the scenic route has proper stops so that the journey
Yeah,
as
that's
a
a
whole
great
is
analogy.
satisfying.
And it goes further to show the significance of context. For example, in team collaboration, emphasizing only individual performance without coordinating with the team might result in sub optimization, even though everyone's performing well in isolation.
Totally, it's like each member is a piece of a puzzle. Even if each piece is optimized individually for its shape, if they don't fit together, the whole picture is off.
Exactly. And what about resource allocation? I recall the discussion mentioning how, in marketing, sometimes investing in a single channel might optimize ROI dramatically. But then, by doing that, you risk missing out on a diversified approach.
Right. So if you split your budget too narrowly, you might not reach a broader audience. Instead, sometimes a little suboptimization, like spreading out the investments, can actually contribute to a more resilient strategy, provided that the overall aim isn't
Definitely, that's a
compromised.
nuanced balance. It really shines a light on the importance of interdependencies. Everything in a system is connected, and tinkering with one part can have ripple effects elsewhere.
Absolutely. And an interesting point they made was about unforeseen constraints. You might plan for optimization, but then say a sudden shortage or an unexpected change arises. Then your plan might need to subtly shift into a suboptimal yet necessary workaround.
Life does throw curveballs. Exactly. It's like having a backup plan. And then the ethical side also comes into play. For instance, in healthcare, optimizing for cost saving can sometimes lead to suboptimization that affects patient care.
Yes, and that's a serious trade off. Ethics need to be woven into optimization strategies to ensure that improvements don't come at the cost of overall well being. You really can't afford to neglect that
Right,
aspect.
absolutely crucial. Now, let's not forget the examples of using these terms in real sentences. They mentioned how you might say, through optimization strategies, we improved our supply chain efficiency, versus focusing only on one area led to suboptimization that hurt our overall performance.
Yeah, those examples really help clarify. It's not just academic talk, it's practical language to ensure everyone's on the same page.
Yep, totally. And finally, there was a nod to Sean Manaher, the founder of the Content Authority. His role, as described, is pretty dynamic. Not only is he managing content, but he's a leader among top content creators with a flair for creativity.
Right? And that bit about him calling pancakes, that adds a quirky human element to the discussion. It reminds us that no matter how optimized processes get, there's always space for personality and creativity.
Absolutely. So, all in all, whether in business, technology, or even personal endeavors, the challenge is to strike that balance between focusing on key components and keeping our eye on the broader goal.
Exactly. It's about making informed choices that harness the interconnectedness of all parts. When you optimize with a full system perspective, the benefits tend to compound, unlike in suboptimization, where you might inadvertently create bottlenecks.
Right, that's a solid wrap up. I really appreciate how we can break this down into relatable metaphors, like the puzzle pieces and road trip analogy. It makes the whole concept less abstract and more applicable to everyday decision making.
Absolutely. It's, all about ensuring that while you're making tweaks and improvements, you never lose sight of how everything fits together, both in the short term and for long term
Yep,
success.
couldn't have said it better.